That's it. There she is.
Does not.
Street car turned race car. From street to track, this thing is ready to
Public act.
Please stand by. Public.
Was it worth it? Destroying a perfectly good Boss 302. Was it worth the investment, the time, the planning, the design, the engineering? Did it pay off in the end? Do we have any regrets? Should we have just purchased a used Boss 302S turnkey race?
We are here at Galpin Autosports. Wanted to answer one of the questions that a lot of you have been asking. Was it worth it? Was it worth turning a Boss 302 street car into a full-blown track car? A car that we can't even take on a mountain road or even drive down the street to enjoy. It's literally dedicated for the track. Was it worth it? Was it worth the hassle, the headache, the expense? Let's get to some of those questions.
That's it. There she is.
I also want to present to you our 1-year ownership review of owning a Boss 302 track car, not a street car. But we're going to discuss the 1-year ownership experience of turning a street car into a track car. How exactly does it feel to not be able to drive this car on the street anymore, or take it down to the beach, or go on a windy mountain? After 1 year and many missed opportunities of canyon drives in this vehicle, only to take it on the track, how do we feel? Was it worth it? Was it worth the investment, the time? And what's the last year been like with our overall experience with
the full bolt-on Roadrunner engine? There's a reason why the Coyote platform is beloved around the world for drag racers, road racers, autocross. The Coyote platform is easily one of my favorite engines for road racing applications. Not just because of its linear power delivery, and not because it's not prone to heat soak after long sessions on the track, but it's because of its reliability. And I've said this over and over. This engine is incredibly reliable. For the linear power it makes and the reliability factor for road racing applications, it simply is one of the best V8 engines you can use time after time on the track. After 1 year of running our Roadrunner engine on E85, after track day, the engine is still delivering its power smoothly. The engine does not heat soak, it has no issues in hot weather, and thanks to the nature of the engine, it still pulls around 8,500 RPMs. It's just unbelievable to drive. This engine is top class when it comes to road racing V8 engines. It's one of my favorite V8 engines for road racing applications, and there's no way it's leaving our garage. It is my belief and opinion that Coyote Generation 1, 2, and 3, and really the Roadrunner, Voodoo, and Predator are all fantastic engines based off the Coyote platform. After 1 year of ownership, I can report the engine has had no issues or problems, reliability has been perfect, and simple maintenance has had this engine on the track with no downtime. And for this engine to consistently take this type of regular abuse, it's a true testament to the quality of this engine and the longevity of its performance. After 1 year of ownership, I can definitely see why people believe the Coyote, and specifically the Roadrunner engine here in this situation, is one of the best naturally aspirated V8 engines Ford has ever made for road racing applications. Performance, reliability, and longevity, all incredibly important attributes for a naturally aspirated V8 engine for road racing applications. The MT82 transmission. You know, the one where I said in a previous video it was like swallowing a Molotov cocktail? I still feel that way, and we're on our third MT82 transmission, but we think we figured something out that may work. Just hear me out 1 second. I think we figured out a little custom combination that may work for the time being to get the maximum life out of this MT82 before we junk it for something better. With the combination of our MGW shifter, our MMR billet high RPM competition pulse ring, and the McLeod MagForce clutch with single aluminum flywheel, I think we've got the MT82 right where we want it before we decide to do something major with the transmission. We may follow in the footsteps of our friend Ryan, who has a Ben Calamer stage H2 MT82 that was just recently built, that he's currently putting back in his Boss as we speak. We are also considering a Tremec T56 transmission in the future, but we'll have to weigh cost-benefit analysis when that time comes. After 1 year of ownership with the MT82 transmission, I have to say it is the weak link of this vehicle. I feel like it has so much potential, as there are times when you can rip off some really fast shifts. It's just so problematic, and we're on our third one. I have to say, it hasn't been such a pleasurable experience with the MT82 transmission, and it's been the only major problem for this vehicle. This is where the major expense and investment went into the project vehicle build. In order for our Boss to go faster, and for it to compete at high levels of performance, we needed to do two primary things. One, weight reduction. Get the vehicle as light as possible. Two, we needed to install correct suspension geometry and have proper vehicle dynamics on track. The Boss has 500 rear wheel horsepower, which is plenty for our application. So the goal was to get it lighter and make it turn in faster, be able to put power down quicker coming out of an apex, and be able to brake and stop exactly when we needed it to. We wanted to go as far into a corner and dive into a corner as possible, knowing these brakes would stop on a dime. The idea was to reduce as much weight as possible, but as we continued the weight reduction process, we knew this was going to be a dedicated track car. We wanted to take everything out, and we're still in the process of doing weight reduction. For example, plexiglass to replace glass, a proper fuel cell, lighter front and rear tubular bumpers, a lot of extras that you'll see in upcoming uploads. Although getting the Roadrunner engine up to 500 rear wheel horsepower on E85 fuel was very important to help the car's speed and performance on track, the most noticeable attributes that I think helped the car the most were the additions of the weight reduction and the changes in suspension geometry and vehicle dynamics. Due to the reduced weight and proper suspension, the car now turns in so sharply, is able to put power down so quickly after an apex, has incredible stopping power so you can go deep into a corner before you have to brake, and lays down the hurt on the straightaways when you put your foot to the floor. I am incredibly impressed how the S197 Mustang platform has responded to weight reduction, proper suspension, and power additions to the engine. And in case you're wondering, there are no issues with the live axle in the rear anymore. The Cortex coilovers, JRI double adjustable shocks, and Cortex Watts link have mitigated any issues with the rear end slipping out under tight cornering issues or putting power down coming out of an apex. You're not going to upset the rear end riding the curbs going into a turn or coming out of a turn. After 1 year of ownership, we are very happy with the suspension modifications we've made, and we're very impressed with how well the S197 Mustang responds to suspension modifications and, most importantly, weight reduction. This is an area of the vehicle that actually surprised everyone involved. Now make no mistake, we're not the first Mustang to race on race slicks. That's obvious. So the slicks definitely improved our grip, handling, steering, everything, all of the above. I think what surprised everyone the most were how the adjustable steering modes reacted with the slicks and the new suspension geometry. There was a greater difference between each of the modes: comfort, normal, and sport. Now in terms of Mustang steering and handling, the normal mode always felt a little too superficial for me. Oddly enough, the two modes that were the most interesting were the comfort mode and the sport mode. Comfort mode did seem to feel a little dead until you needed to turn at the last second, but it was highly accurate when you needed to turn. Sport mode felt the most consistent and actually felt like you were driving a car that had accurate steering, at least as far as electric steering racks go. Now, I've never driven a Boss 302R race car, but I just can't imagine it's as accurate and precise as the Boss 302R race car electric steering rack. But I think this is pretty good for a street car turned track car. After 1 year of ownership, I can say the car stays absolutely flat, puts down power well, handles precisely, turns in incredibly sharply, and now just feels like a really big go-kart with a lot of power to the rear wheels. Another thing that really impressed us after driving this around the track for 1 year is just how precise and immediate the turn-in is, and how the steering feel has improved so much with the combination of the racing slicks and the corrected suspension geometry. After 1 year, we've had no reliability issues with the suspension, the chassis, the steering, or anything like that, and we are happy to say the investment was well worth it for these modifications. This last category cannot be overlooked or take it for granted with the S197 platform when it comes to road racing applications. Braking is so important, and upgraded brakes really help this chassis. I cannot stress that enough. But the most important modifications we have made to the car so far, and that we're actually continuing to make, is in the category of aerodynamics. At high speeds, This Mustang just did not feel stable, and it's one of those things we thought of right away. The G-Stream rear wing and the front Laguna Seca splitter were one of the first modifications we did to this car before we decided to make it a dedicated track car. We noticed at high speeds how much more stable the Mustang was with the rear wing and combination of the Laguna Seca front splitter. It actually felt stable enough to take at very, very high speeds on tracks like Auto Club Speedway. When you combine this with the reduced weight, correct suspension geometry, and improved vehicle dynamics, you have a vehicle that you can confidently take at high speeds, put the power down right away when you're coming out of turns. It's really a whole new car. After 1 year of ownership, we are very satisfied with the aerodynamic upgrades and modifications we've made to the Boss 302, and we're also equally satisfied with the Shelby GT500 6-piston front brake setup that we put on the car. It stops much more confidently, and we can throw the car deep into a turn before we have to stop. As I've spoken very highly of the Ford Racing Track Key tune that comes with the Boss 302, the engine braking feature has also been very useful when racing on track, and really, if you're careful enough and experienced enough, you don't really ever have to use the brakes in your car. The engine braking will take care of everything for you. After 1 year of ownership, regarding the aerodynamics, brakes, and engine braking from the Ford Racing Track Key tune, we've had no reliability issues, no major problems to report, and we're very satisfied with everything we've done in this category. Overall, this car has been incredibly easy to maintain. It's very reliable. Other than the MT82 transmission issues, we've had no other issues with the vehicle. It's been a pleasure to drive, a pleasure to own, and after 1 year, we're just getting started driving this car, enjoying it, and seeing what its true potential is out on the track. We've spent the last year dialing it in, testing it, and continuing modifications that's really prevented us from stopping and actually finding out what the actual benchmark times are for this car at local tracks. Other than major consumables like tires and fuel, and conducting regular fluid changes after every race, I give the reliability of our Boss 302 a near perfect score if it wasn't for that MT82 transmission. Performance. I'll never forget the first time I really had a chance to test the Boss 302 out at Willow Springs. With the modifications to the Roadrunner engine to get it to 500 rear wheel horsepower, the weight reduction efforts, and the upgraded suspension, aerodynamics, and racing slicks, the Boss 302 track car was chasing down cars much faster than it. The linear power delivery of the Roadrunner engine and how it still pulls well above 8,000 RPMs, the fluid neutral nature of the chassis and suspension, the reduced weight of the vehicle to make it feel like a go-kart, and the upgraded brakes to throw the car deep into a turn before we have to brake. It is definitely a track car. After 1 year of ownership, we are incredibly satisfied and impressed with the Boss 302's performance in all of the categories of engine horsepower and performance, suspension and chassis, aerodynamics and braking, and handling and grip. After 1 year of owning this track car, we can tell you there have been some challenges with this vehicle. For one, the steering modes are a lot more sensitive now that we have the proper suspension geometry and racing slicks on the vehicle. Turn-in is immediate and precise, and you have to be more careful because the steering is not so numb and dead at top dead center as it once was. It took a while for us to adapt to what once was a heavy car, now having precise, nimble steering. It's really an amazing experience. The second challenge, which we've already discussed, is the MT82 transmission. In trying to take a stock OEM MT82 transmission and turn it race spec. The third challenge is really more financially focused in realizing the consumables on this vehicle wear out very quickly. Fluids have to be changed after every race. We are constantly having to purchase racing slicks. It's very expensive. I know I'm stating the obvious, but I just wanted to help you realize that when you build a vehicle like this, you have to plan for consumables. And if you're going to race the vehicle all the time on track, you really do have to plan out future use of the vehicle and budget your costs per race. The most important question, was it worth it? Is it worth investing $20, $30, $40, $50,000 into a proper track build? Does the investment support the utility that the vehicle will provide you on track? Is it worth the fun, the experiences, the memories? That's a subjective question. But for us, well, I think you already know what we're gonna say. Yes. It was worth the investment. Considering how often we were going to the track, it was a vehicle that actually was going to be used quite a bit. And as I've discussed, the vehicle is incredibly reliable. We can take it out to the track anytime we want, and we know it'll be worry and problem free. We've been involved in some great builds. and some that haven't gone so well. But this was a good build, and it's a testament to the S197 Mustang. The platform is very easy to work on, and in terms of how far your money goes, you get great performance and potential in return. There's really no experience quite like driving this car out on the racetrack. It is a visceral experience. It enlightens all 5 of your senses. It's one of those vehicles that's grandfathered into our garage because it's so special, and it really is just such a raw, meaningful driving experience. The Boss 302 drove on the track better than we expected, and it's one of the vehicles we will benchmark and keep in our garage for future years to come out on the track. I'd like to answer 2 more questions that have been presented to us regarding the Boss 302 and the build that we completed. The first question is this: if I have $15,000 to invest right now in my Boss 302 for road racing applications, what should I invest it in? $15,000 in engine upgrades, whether it's supercharging, turbocharging, naturally aspirated cam upgrade? Would you invest $15,000 in the engine or $15,000 in weight reduction, chassis, suspension, and tires? For the Boss 302, I would recommend investing that money in the weight reduction, suspension, chassis, tires, brakes, etc. Again, for road racing applications. The S197 Boss 302, in my opinion, reacted best and ran quicker on track with the weight reduction, suspension modifications, and a sticky tire. The Roadrunner engine out of the factory is plenty capable and revs very high, and really with just a tune and maybe race fuel, you'll have all the power you need. We didn't have to upgrade the Roadrunner engine, but we did it to follow the theme of the car and to present more balanced modifications to the vehicle all the way around. Again, this is just my opinion, but I think that $15,000 would be better spent in reducing weight out of the vehicle, lowering the center of gravity, getting a sticky tire, and correcting some suspension geometry issues. Those modifications will help you pick up faster times out on the track and really will help complement the potential for lower lap times. The second question is somewhat related, but here it is. What is the one most important modification you did during this project build? I interpret this to mean, what was the one modification completed where your investment showed the most result? Taking into consideration that all things work together and one modification really benefits the other, I would have to still say weight reducing the S197 Boss 302 really yielded the most results and impressive feedback on the racetrack. Not only did Ford Racing give the Boss 302 such an incredible engine right out of the factory, but it also has 5-way adjustable shocks on all 4 corners. So if you dial in your suspension correctly and you know how to work the engine at high RPMs out on the racetrack, really, it's already a very capable vehicle right off the showroom floor. But we found that weight reducing the S197 Boss 302 chassis right away yielded the most impressive results on track. The car became incredibly nimble and really improved lap times the most out of any other modification done to the vehicle. Yes, including the Ford Racing Cobra Jet cams. Other than a good brake racing pad and a good sticky tire, you're really ready to go right out of the factory. The last question, why didn't we just purchase a used Boss 302S? It's ready to go, you don't have to do anything. Why not just go with a Boss 302S? The answer for us was really simple. We wanted the journey and the experience of taking a street car and turning it into a track car. In conclusion, after 1 year of ownership, we have no regrets. The Boss 302 track car has performed well above our expectations, has surprised us at every turn, and is incredible to drive on track every single time. It never gets old. The free-flowing quad exhaust surrounding you, the roar of the Roadrunner engine well above 8,000 RPMs, the sound of the rocks from the road flinging off the sticky racing slicks, hitting the wheel wells and echoing through the cavernous cabin of the vehicle that's been weight reduced down to nothing, and the feeling of being sucked to the ground as this vehicle traverses the Auto Club Speedway oval well over 155 miles per hour, and feeling the aerodynamics just suck you right into the ground. It's an experience I can't explain with words. This vehicle is staying in our garage. It is grandfathered in. We will upgrade the transmission and have at that point what we define as a well-balanced, perfect Boss 302 track vehicle. If you're new to the channel, dive in deeper now. You're not going to want to miss when we take out the Boss 302 to the track and test out the MagForce clutch, the MMR competition pulse ring, the MGW shifter. It should take this OEM stock MT82 transmission, dive in deeper, dive in more weight reduction, transmission upgrades, suspension upgrades. Thank you so much for